everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Create a Math Scavenger Hunt. We are so excited to explore this idea with you today as you continue engaging with Seesaw. I'm Angela and I taught kindergarten for 15 years and we were using Seesaw in my classroom. I fell in love with it and really wanted to support you, all the teachers around the world that are getting started or already using Seesaw. Make sure to reach out to me on Twitter. I want to see what ideas you are trying in your own classroom after attending this session. And we do offer certificates if you view this session. So if you are listening to the recording, please note you need to listen to the entire recording where we give a 6-character code. We usually break that up into a couple different components. So make sure you're writing that down if you are watching this on YouTube or in a follow-up email. So today's plan, we are going to talk about the what, why, and when of a scavenger hunt. We are going to watch an example that I use in my own classroom. I'm going to talk through some setup tips for success if you've never tried this, which a lot of you have not tried this yet. And we are going to actually, give it a try. So if you are signed into your own Seesaw class, you can play around with us here today and do a little bit of exploring. I'm also going to save time at the end for questions and planning for your next steps. So let's just jump on in. Okay, first, the what, why, and when. So my response to that, it could happen no matter what you're teaching, what content. So I have named this Math Scavenger Hunt because my example clearly is connected to math, but you could do this in reading or art or music or social studies or anytime, science. It works great if you are maybe ending a unit and you want to have a really fun way to review. If there's something that your students are struggling with or need extra practice and you're looking for an interactive way to add collaboration and problem solving and movement, yes, movement, in your classroom, this can be a great fit for you. Now, I called it a scavenger hunt. And I don't know if that's the best term to describe it in the example that I show, just because normally when I think of a scavenger hunt, you're given a list and you go find the stuff. This is a little bit more of like an interactive journey, I could say, but I call it a scavenger hunt just to give it some sort of title that might connect with something you've possibly experienced before. And again, the when, this could take place at any time. And the example that I'm going to share took place in my own classroom. So you don't have to envision students, running around the school or all over the place. This can be right inside your own classroom if you choose to do that. Second, we are going to jump into an actual example and you're going to see students in action doing this scavenger hunt. So what I'm going to do is set this up a little bit and give you a little bit of context. And then I have a video that actually walks through the process of not only creating it, but the students participating in doing it. So in my classroom, we were, again, I taught kindergarten. We were struggling with decomposing numbers. So basically things like there's 10 and you take away 2, what's left, or things like that. So that can get a little repetitive, right? So I was trying to find ways to not only give my students practice, but really motivate them and also throw in collaboration. So what I actually did is I had my students help me create the problems per se. And then they would post to Seesaw and it might be something like, there are 5 cubes in this box. If I take 2 away, how many are left? We wouldn't say the answer, we would end it with a question. So then students, when they visited that area of the classroom, they would be able to see that video and then they would solve it as a team. And when they had the answer, then they would go hunt for the next the next problem with that answer. So you're gonna kind of see what I'm talking about when you watch this. So I'm gonna start this, we're gonna share this example, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense as we continue this conversation. All right, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better idea of what this looked like in my classroom, and a couple things just to call out. So first of all, I had students working in groups of 3 because number 1, we like to collaborate. Number 2, I didn't have one-to-one devices, so they couldn't do this independently. And each student had a job. So I had a student that had a clipboard that actually they were using that to write down the answers. I had another student whose job was I think I called it the finder, and another student who held the device, but they collaborated. So as you can see in this photo right here, I hung up the pages that led to the posts in Seesaw. Students would scan that QR code with the Seesaw QR reader that's built in, where they actually tap their profile icon and scan code. That would bring them to the interactive component in Seesaw. Maybe it's a video, maybe it's a drawing, maybe it's taking them to a link to somewhere else. Whatever you want that to be, you can decide. And once they work together as a team to solve to get the answer, you'll see on this piece of paper there, like this one had a number 2. So once they came here because the previous answer was 2. So that led them to their next page, if that makes sense. Now, you don't have to have that happen in the hunt that you create. You could just have separate ones and maybe they're just bopping around to wherever they see a piece of paper. But I wanted to create a situation where I knew only one group would be at each spot potentially at a time. So that's why I had it flow like that in terms of one, once they got an answer, that would lead them to the next sign. So again, keep in mind, this could be done with any sort of content. It doesn't just have to be math. It doesn't even have to look exactly like this. So let's talk through a couple tips for success as you are getting set up and trying this for the first time. Before we go into that, I'm just going to share the first 3 digits of the code for the certificate. Those digits are 634. So once you've done this, you kind of learn a couple things. So I'm going to share that with you. So from the teacher perspective, you can do this all on your own and prepare it. In the example that I shared, I actually had my students help create the content. So, but to start with the teacher perspective, you're going to first start with your purpose. Why are you going to do this, and what are you going to present? What kind of content? What are you hoping the students learn or interact with? Okay, so make that decision first, of course. In Seesaw, you are actually going to create a folder called Scavenger Hunt, or whatever you want to call it. And then when you create the posts, you need to just make sure that if you're creating just as a teacher, I usually tag it to sample student and then that Scavenger Hunt folder. Then I'll print the PDF of the QR codes. And then, of course, before you want students to do it, it's a great idea to test it out yourself. So you can do the scanning and just do a little playing to make sure you've got everything ready to roll. And I'm going to show you this process in just a moment, and you can even try along with me if you have your device as well. Students, as I also mentioned, could help create the content easily too. So 2 ways they might do that. Number 1, they're just creating a post and they are adding it to the folder Scavenger Hunt. The reason that we add it to that folder Scavenger Hunt is because it's going to save you a lot of time where you can print all of the posts in that folder without having to do it one by one. The other option is they could also respond to an activity that a teacher has shared, basically asking them to create their post. And in that flow, a teacher can already tag a folder before they share that activity, so the students don't even need to do that. Okay, so there's kind of 2 ways to approach it if you're having students create some of this content. And I'm actually going to, before we go starting with students, I'm actually going to show you the flow that I would take here. So number 1, we're just going to pretend. Maybe you're thinking of something that's coming up in your classroom. I know at least in the US here, it's getting close to some holidays, which are a great time to think of ways to keep your students moving appropriately and having lots of opportunities to do that. Let's just say that. So this might come in handy around this time of year. So in today's example, I am just going to do a really quick example of some story problems with subtraction. Okay, let's say that's what we're going to focus on. So I've already picked my content. The second thing that I need to do to prepare here before I start creating anything is I'm actually going to add a folder. So I'm going to go in the upper right to my wrench, and I'm going to scroll down to my Manage Folders tab. And I want to create a folder called Scavenger Hunt. So I'm going to do that right now. And I put a little dot at the beginning. That's helpful if you are going to have students add to this folder. So it will be near the top of the list. There it is. I might even change the color so it looks a little different than the one right under it. Okay, so I've got that folder created. Awesome. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, because I'm signed in as a teacher, I'm going to go to the green add button. I'm going to choose post student work, and I'm going to upload a photo that I took earlier today, and I'm just going to do a couple of examples. So again, I'm starting with a photo. You might actually shoot a video. Maybe this is a video of you talking and doing some sort of mini lesson for your students. That could be kind of fun, right? So here we go. I'm going to start my mic to do my recording. Once upon a time, there were 10 busy triangles. They were walking through the forest when all of a sudden, 3 of them disappeared. How many are left? Okay, so I'm just keeping it simple, right? For the context of today, I'm going to tap the green check. Look, it's looking good. Okay, wonderful. Awesome. I'm going to refresh here. Oh, here we go. I think I backed out of that. So let's try that again. Wowza. Exciting, right? That's always exciting. So let's try this again with my amazing purple triangles. All right, so here we go with my recording. I'm going to actually use, let's try voice caption this time. How about that? Once upon a time, there were 10 purple triangles playing in the forest. 3 of them disappeared. How many are left? So I'm done with that recording. For some reason, I think my account is acting a little weird and it's not letting me upload, but there we go. There's my green check. So I'm adding this to, I'm just posting this to sample student, okay? And then I'm gonna tag it with scavenger hunt because I want all of these posts to go there, okay? Now, let's pretend I have created like 10 of these, or your students have helped you and they're tagged with scavenger hunt. Because I am on a computer right now, I can actually just sort to this folder. So I'm gonna go just tap on scavenger hunt. You'll see here, I have been filtered to scavenger hunt folder, and I'm actually only looking at sample student right now. But I'm gonna choose print PDF, and anything that would be associated with the scavenger hunt folder would be able to be printed as, you know, maybe a booklet of 15 different posts. So you're only having to do this once. So I go to print PDF, that is getting prepared, and then it's just gonna save me time because, again, imagine you have more than one, right, of these posts. So then this is what you would hang up in your classroom to have available for this hunt. So again, students would scan this with the built-in QR code reader in Seesaw, and then off they go. They're up and moving and rocking and rolling. So if you are getting started with students and they are going to give this a try, couple tips. Again, use the scanner built into Seesaw. There is no need to say, oh, I'm gonna download a different QR app. Don't do that. Just tap the profile icon and then the scan option will come up in the bottom left. You'll see that now, scan QR code. And that will read any QR codes created from Seesaw. A couple other helpful reminders before you have your students try this. Model it first, right? So if you're going on this adventure, you maybe want to model with one page, how to scan the code, push play on the video, and then X out and be ready to scan the next one. Again, you know your students best. Turn up the volume on the device or wear headphones. Kids get really excited. It can get really noisy when you have kids moving and grooving and walking around the classroom. So sometimes it can be hard to hear. Number 3, working together in groups is always great. That collaboration is amazing. And I found it helpful to give each student a job, as I kind of described before. And you might also want to have a recording sheet to show answers, or you could truly have, you know, a scavenger hunt list. So you could have something where they are finding, you know, the certain posters or whatever, and that's how they're checking them off. Again, if you're not kind of doing a flow where it leads them naturally to the next one. So think about how you want to set that up. And woof, I cruised through that. And I want to have time for questions because I know I talked really quickly. So I'm going to give the code for the certificate. The last 3 digits are 827. And I'm also going to hop into questions because I am eager to hear what questions you have and what I can demonstrate for you today. And I would also encourage you just to try this right now. If you are in your Seesaw class and you're thinking, oh, I can create my own video, or I could take a photo and, you know, record and draw and talk, or go for it, add it to sample student, play around with it. Maybe you're getting that scavenger hunt folder ready. I'm not sure. Like maybe that is your first step. Let's try it. So Connie is asking, is this like a count or write the room activity except digital? I would say not. I would say not really. I mean, kind of, but not really. So basically, There's more involved because they are solving a problem, they're interacting with it before they move on. So it's not just like, oh, I found that one, off I go. I found that one, off I go. They're actually having to scan the QR code, listen to the video, listen to what's on there, and then they're working together as a group to solve that problem. So of course the example I gave today was really, really simple because I wanted it to be fast, but I also wanted to keep it, you know, that's really what my itty bitty kindergartners did. So it could be really complex. It could be more, it could be much more complex. It might be a situation where students are there for several minutes working together. Jennifer's saying, how would you use this with 5th or 6th grade students? So Jennifer, the opportunities are endless. So what I would encourage you to do, Jennifer, is think about something that you have coming up, some content that you have coming up in your classroom, and think about, could it fit into this type of framework or this type of interactive experience for your students? For example, if in math, you are going to present your students with, I don't know, let's just pretend they're doing a worksheet of 10 different problems. Could that, instead of being on a worksheet in 10 different problems, could that be part of a scavenger hunt, right? If you are exploring aspects in science, could you have students you know, break up some of that vocabulary, and maybe they're experiencing different vocabulary videos as they're exploring. So tons of different possibilities. I think the thing to start with first is what content you want them interacting with, if that makes sense. Lillian is asking, how long are your videos for each hunt? So again, that's really up to you. That's really, really flexible, however you want to create it. In my experience in my classroom, most of them were under a minute, maybe even shorter than that. It really depends what you want students interacting with, and that, you know, start with that. So it's completely up to you. I probably would not have them longer than 3 minutes. I think otherwise that might be getting a little bit too hefty. Okay, so Marcy, this is a great question. She's saying, do you only have the group of 3 working while the others are doing something else? Or are they all going around your room during the hunt? Yeah, so they are all going around the room during the hunt. So to paint this picture a little bit more clearly, I had 5 devices. I had groups of 3, so that was 15 students. I'm pretty sure I borrowed 3 devices from my teacher next door. So that gave me enough for my 24 kindergartners to be doing this at the same time. So I had 8 groups of 3 going on at the same time in my classroom. So again, there is going to be a level of some routine building that you might need to do if your students have never experienced this type of lesson in your classroom. So think about that first. Oh, fractions. Jennifer, this is perfect. Working on fractions would be amazing. Tony wants to know, do you suggest that all classes have a sample student? Does this make it easier? So absolutely. And Tony, any new class you create has a sample student. If it's not turned on in your class, you can find that in your account, in your class settings to turn that on. Oh my goodness, Amanda teaches high school geometry and algebra. I was thinking about using this idea for reviewing our midterm test. Yes, 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 Amanda, you better tweet me and tell me, show me pictures, tell me how it goes. Absolutely, this could be for anything. If you're teaching high school Spanish, if you're teaching middle school history, think about it as another way to engage your students. And I would also challenge you to think about how you can have your students create this. So what I didn't talk about was more details about how I had my students do it. I actually wrote down the numbers 1 through 10, and then I passed those out, actually probably 1 through 8, because I had 8 different groups. I passed those out, and I said, you know, your answer has to equal 7. What's the problem? Your answer has to equal 6. What's the problem? So that's how they did it. They had to work together to create the post. Then I gathered them all and printed them out. So think about that as well. Yay, Debbie, she's used this before. That's so awesome, to review end of a unit. Such a good idea. Could you show how to put the QR code on the sheet again, please? Oh, Elaine, you are just gonna, it's so easy, you're not even gonna believe it. Because Seesaw does the work for you. So anything you post to Seesaw, you can actually tap the 3 dots and then either choose print, which will print you the 1 page of that post, okay, and it has the QR code on it and everything, all right? Of course I have a pop-up blocker. Why not? I'm running into all sorts of interesting things in this session, so that's exciting for me. Or you can also choose get item QR code, and it will generate the QR code just to that post. But again, that's a one-on-one situation, whereas if you get it in the folder for a scavenger hunt, you can print all of them in a PDF. So let's just try this print again and see if my pop-up blocker is working, or maybe it's still being fussy for me. Why not, right? So here we go. It just puts it on the page for you. So this QR code leads to the video and multimedia components. It's not just a picture, if that makes sense. All right. How can you add the answer to the PDF that's printed? Debbie, also super sophisticated. I just wrote it with a marker. So that's all I did. Is there a way students can create these for each other? Yes. So Danny, hopefully I just walked you through that a little bit. Hopefully that idea helps. How do students create an account, or do they do that? Do you do that for them? So if you're not yet using Seesaw, definitely you create your own teacher account. But because most people here probably already have students using Seesaw, you don't have to create an account for them. They just post to your class. And they can even post as themselves and just put it in the folder. They don't have to post as sample student. I posted as sample student when I was posting as a teacher. Okay, Pamela, if I create a scavenger hunt to practice in my sample student folder, then I want to use it for the whole class. Do I have to remake it, or can I transfer it to an actual student assignment? Oh, yeah, so you can completely, you don't have to move it at all. They can interact with things as sample student. If you're saying you want to create it as a true Seesaw activity, you would probably have to download that video to add it to the activity. But really creating the activity is more related to a workflow to get students to respond. So I don't know if I'm really clarifying that too well. Amanda, do you or can you vary the starting point for the groups? Oh, great question. Yes, all of my groups started at a different point. So I had probably 10 pieces of paper or 12 pieces of paper hanging up. I had 8 different groups. Each group started at a different point. And because mine flowed, so I knew, you know, one led to only one or the other, and that led to the other, it wasn't a problem. But again, test it out. Treva, once created, can the scavenger hunt be shared with other teachers? Ooh. So I would say absolutely. You could obviously just print the PDFs for them and they would be good to go. Do kids record their response, and how do they post them? So just like they're posting to Seesaw, they just add it to their journal. If they're trying to create, let's just say the word problem or the video for the hunt, they just post to Seesaw. Now, if they're involved in the hunt and they're actively doing it, and you want the students to post to Seesaw to share their answer, for example, they could. Now, I'm also gonna maybe make like your head spin for a second. The other option is when students scan that QR code when they're doing a hunt. Let me see if I can find a picture that might just show this. So when they're scanning this QR code, if they're a student in the class where that item is posted, they can actually comment on the post. If they could even share their answer there as a comment. and record that with their voice or even type it if that makes sense. Amanda wants to know, when the group gets an answer, they find it on another paper around the room, right? Yes. How did you put the answers on each poster and at each location? So again, I just wrote it with a marker. Nothing fancy. I wrote it with a marker and just stuck them around the room. Let's see. Okay, yeah, so Laura is very, very new to Seesaw. So Laura, come to getting started with Seesaw if you haven't yet. But basically what students would do is they are just going to create their own post if you want them to make the videos or problems that are hanging up around the classroom. So they would just go to add, and you know, they're just going to come right to the tool. So maybe they're going to choose the drawing and they're going to create, you know, we have all these awesome shapes in Seesaw now. So maybe they're going to just create a problem with some of these shapes, and they're going to say, you know, if there are 5 hearts and, you know, or let's make another one. If there are 6 hearts and 3 students, how many hearts does each student get? I don't know, right? So they're going to tap the green check. They can add that to their real name. They would then tag the folder scavenger hunt. Now I should show you one thing before we go. If you want students to tag the folder, up in the upper right in manage class, you need to make sure that under folders that the show add to folder step says students and teachers. Otherwise, they're not going to see that option to add it to a folder, if that makes sense. I also want to pause and note that we're over a few minutes, so I want to respect your time. And if you're feeling like, hey, I'm feeling good, I'm totally going to do this next week in my classroom, that is phenomenal and awesome, and I hope you share with me what you do. But please take the survey that's going to pop up on your screen when you exit this session. I'm going to hang out for a few more moments to answer questions that are still here. All right. Okay. Questions coming in. Okay, so Anna's asking other examples of a scavenger hunt. So I'm not going to share any other examples right now today, but I would just encourage you to think really big. Anything you are teaching in your class, Anne, could probably be some sort of scavenger hunt, okay? It might be something like, you know, maybe you have a video and you have 4 mixed up, you know, you have 4 letters and they're all mixed up and the students have to figure out what word it is. I don't know. They have to unscramble them, figure it out, and like, oh my gosh, the word is like, and off they go to the next one. And then they're interacting with the video and they figure out, oh my gosh, we have to solve this problem. So anything you truly can think of could be made into a hunt. You kind of just have to think about what you want them practicing or reviewing. And the slides you should have in the handout section of this session right now. Social studies content, Lillian, boy, endless opportunities here. So I think, for example, it might be interesting to talk about specific events. I know, right, Anne? The possibilities are endless. So just think about anything that you are presenting to students. Could it be presented in a scavenger hunt? So maybe instead of you standing at the front of the room teaching, could that be broken up into 10 different aspects in a hunt? I don't know. Marcy, do you happen to have these directions in printed form so we can share them with our colleagues? I think it would be easier for them to follow while I show them how to do it. So I think, Marcy, I think these slides are going to be your best friend. So I think it will show some of the steps, but I would highly recommend showing this. But I think the steps here in this slide will actually be helpful. And of course, I demonstrated some of them, so I didn't have time to do every single step. So maybe that is a good starting point for you. Does Seesaw have any conferences coming up? Bonnie, great question. People are always talking about Seesaw at all sorts of conferences. We do not have a conference that we host coming up like soon. So this PD and PJs is your best opportunity right now. So, whew, all right, we went fast. We talked about a lot of mind-bending ideas, and I definitely want you to keep me posted. Maybe we can have an entire huge thread of ideas related to scavenger hunts. So give it a try, see how it goes, and again, think about making sure your students kind of have those skills of, do they know how to scan the QR code with the Seesaw app? Do they know how to, you know, play the video and X out? So think about those things in terms of making it happen, and let me know how it goes. So we're gonna say goodbye right now. Make sure you fill out the survey that's gonna pop on your screen in just a moment, and let me know what you wanna learn about next. Thanks, everyone.